I want you guys to keep this in mind. Before you sell a company, look into its business. Is the company evolving with the times? I got another example for you guys. Walmart started seeing early on where the majority of the market share was going, online. So what did they do? They built up an online presence. So, when should we sell a stock exactly? In today's video, I'm gonna hit you guys with a couple of things I personally like to look out for when I'm debating whether or not to keep a company or to sell it. Hopefully, I'm able to put you guys on some valuable game. So of course, without wasting any more time, let's get into it. So the first thing that we're gonna look out for is if the business is no good. Check this out, you guys. Back in the year 2000, Netflix actually approached Blockbuster to buy them out for about $50 million. And guess what? The Blockbuster executives actually laughed at the offer and said no. Keep this in mind, Netflix was still a small company at the time. They were making some noise though. But anyways, fast forward about 20 years later and Netflix is now worth $100 billion. Funny enough, Blockbuster is now down to only one movie store left in Oregon. It's always funny until it's not. Talk about a fall from grace. Blockbuster as a business was no good. They weren't trying to innovate with the times. They figured going to a store and renting out a movie was gonna be the way to go for the future. As we all know now, that move cost them just about everything. I want you guys to learn from this story. When you're deciding to sell a company or not, look into its business. Do you see them profiting in the future or not? If the Blockbuster executives would have taken a good look at the long-term play, they might have been better equipped to handle for what was gonna come. Even if they didn't buy Netflix, who knows? Blockbuster could have been the very first business to enter the streaming services. I want you guys to keep this in mind. Before you sell a company, look into its business. Is the company evolving with the times? I got another example for you guys. Walmart started seeing early on where the majority of the market share was going, online. So what did they do? They built up an online presence. As a result from that power move, they're the closest competition that Amazon has really got. Walmart is really trying to put up a fight and catch up with Amazon. There's definitely competition going on between those two. As a matter of fact, Amazon just recently announced that they're getting into the pharmacy game, which was actually a direct jab at Walmart, who also have their own pharmacies as well. Let me put it this way for all my ballers. Amazon is basically the Bayern Munich of the business world. They're basically unbeatable. They have their hand in just about every industry. Walmart, on the other hand, is the Dortmund of the business world. They're a solid business and they're steady catching up. So before I move on to number 2, remember, if the business you own is failing to innovate and adapt with the times, it might be a good sign to move on. And the second reason you should consider selling a business is if their industry is dying off. You can have the very best business in an industry, but at the end of the day, it won't matter if the industry itself is dying off. A good example of this one is the movie theater industry. They were already declining before COVID ever hit. The virus only helped tank the industry even lower. When COVID had first hit, everybody was afraid to go out because things were looking a bit uncertain. Nobody really knew what this whole thing was about. As a result, the movie theater industry suffered. Soon after that, they closed due to mandatory shutdowns. So when there's a virus on the loose and the movie theaters are closed, everybody naturally turned to streaming. Netflix gained subscribers like crazy. Disney Plus gained about 10 million in a day. And Hulu, which is owned by Disney, was doing their thing too. Disney even took it a step further and started putting out movies that would have normally been released in movie theaters in the streaming service. They released Mulan on their Disney Plus platform, for example. Universal actually did the same thing as well. They released a movie called Trolls 2 to be rented digitally. But get this, you guys, the second movie made more in 3 weeks off of digital rentals than the first one did in 5 months at the movie theaters. AMC noticed this and shot back at Universal by banning all of their movies from their theater chains. As of right now, there will be no Universal movies shown in any AMC theater around the world. Crazy. Now, movie theaters might not be gone forever, but they're definitely not where they used to be. Streaming is only gonna keep getting bigger, and movie theaters are gonna have to start fighting even harder for more market share. A lot of people are also starting to say that oil is gonna be used less and less as the years go on. It's been made very clear that the transition to renewable energy is in full force. So remember, you guys, if you see that an industry is struggling or heading in the wrong direction with no signs of getting back up again, it's definitely a time to start really looking into that investment. A couple of simple ways to look at where an industry is going is to look at 1, the consumer, and 2, the business's competitors. So of course, that's number 2. If the industry the company operates in is dying, it might be a good sign to let go. And the third way to know when to sell a company is if they cut their dividend. Companies know the importance of paying and growing their dividend. So cutting or suspending a dividend is a very big deal. It usually means that they're struggling. A quick example of this is the hotel chain Marriott. When COVID had first hit and everything was starting to get shut down, they were left with no customers. They started firing thousands of employees and eventually just bit the bullet and suspended their dividend. Those two naturally set their stock price plummeting. Now, Marriott will more than likely survive COVID, but they will come out of it pretty hurt. The point is, when businesses cut or suspend the dividend, it usually means that they can't afford to pay them because number one, their earnings are probably falling, or number two, they're taking on way too much debt, which is of course a terrible situation to be in. If you guys do happen to get a cut in dividends from one of your companies, really look into why. Read up on articles, hit their investor relations page on their website, and of course, check up on press releases. I personally like to go to a website called Seeking Alpha. If something goes on with my companies, I usually find out through them. If not, you can always go to the news sites to see what's going on. I personally like going to CNBC and Reuters. I'll have both of them linked in the description below for you guys. Now, I want you guys to keep this in mind. A dividend cut doesn't automatically mean selling a company all the time. There are a few exceptions. Disney is a good example of one. Earlier on in the year, they had announced that they'd be suspending their semi-annual dividend, which was of course a pretty big deal. I happen to own Disney myself. I didn't end up selling though. They're still in my portfolio as I make today's video. They're still a good company to own, with or without a dividend. I mean, they own other companies like Marvel, for example, which of course are responsible for movies like The Avengers and Iron Man. That's a huge asset to own. Keep that in mind. If a company cuts their dividend, but you know that they're gonna be solid in the future, it might be a good idea to hold on to them. After all, they might just be going through a rough patch. And I think I'm gonna end it there for today. I appreciate all my young hustlers and all my young investors for rocking with me and the channel. Everything I'm doing is to help the culture out. So once again, thank you guys for all the support. Don't forget to hit the video with a quick like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And remember, beat the odds and do the numbers. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.